State Development Company, or whatever that is, what that organization is called. Let's start with that grant. Is she here?
She's here.
That's here.
Yeah,
She
I
might
know
be muted.
there's some, she's had some WebEx challenges, as many of us have had.
Yeah, it's been tough as of late. So we'll move to the next.
Jen.
Is this
There
Jen?
she is.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I had to join video on my computer and audio on my phone.
Not a problem.
Apologies.
No problem. So the floor is yours, Jen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Councilor Bay. Jen Tip, Deputy Commissioner, MBD, and thanks, councilors, for considering this item again on the agenda. About an hour ago, I sent out a revised letter related to this opportunity and also a summary, kind of one-page document that hopefully tries to really clarify the scope of this grant program and what we're aiming to do. I know, as we discussed in the last study session, this grant opportunity is a little bit different than many of the grants we go after. And it requires us to potentially partner with different entities, which we're doing to really clarify the approach here. So I apologize if it's been confusing along the way. If folks have that one-page document that I sent out, that might be the easiest thing to look at. And I'll kind of give a brief introduction to the opportunity and then pause for questions. And if we want to get into the specifics on any of the projects, we can do that. So essentially, this is an opportunity that the state of New York is developing to really promote research, development, and testing of technology-based solutions. And the hypothesis is that those technologies could really help address challenges that are faced by local governments or by the communities that we serve. And so the state is going to select 5 cities across the state to be designated as smart city test beds. And they're trying to incentivize local technology firms, in particular firms based out of New York State, to really be able to develop and deploy tools here in New York State, and to hopefully make it easier for us as to scale those solutions later. As a city, we can actually propose up to 3 different projects, and the city is specifically required to submit the proposal to the state directly, but we are required to work in partnership with research institutions. And they define, the state defines that as universities or other state-sponsored research entities. For example, our tech garden or our biotech incubator would be research entities as well as universities. And it's actually those research entities that are going to receive the state funding and administer the grant dollars. So it's a little bit funny where we're responsible for submitting the application, but we won't actually directly receive the funds from the state ourselves. One of the things I just wanted to clarify off the bat, because I know we've got a few different technology priorities right now, is that this opportunity is distinct and different from the New York Power Authority grant that Sam Edelstein provided an update about 2 weeks ago. So I know we talked in the context of that grant about deploying sensors and similar types of technology. Of course, we've already received or been awarded that NYPA grant to do that kind of thing. This project opportunity really enables us to extend those resources that are available for these types of projects so that maybe we can, test some things using these resources that the state is providing through Empire State Development, which then allows us to really focus those NYPA dollars on other priorities. So we look at these opportunities like this ESD grant as just another way to basically provide us as a city with more resources and opportunities potentially to invest in technology, which is certainly becoming more and more important in times like this with the COVID pandemic as a prime example of technology needs. And so so as I said, we can propose up to 3 projects. We have to do it in partnership with research entities. What we're expecting to do for this grant is to partner with both Syracuse University on 2 different projects really related to building monitoring And then to partner with the Northeast UAS Airspace Integration Research Organization, which is known as New Air. I'm sure many of you are pretty familiar with New Air. They've been based out of our tech garden locally on a drone-based research project to study algae blooms in Skinny Atlas Lake. And so, those project details are summarized in the document I sent. Before we get into that, I'll just pause here for overall questions about the opportunity, and happy to get into details if we need to.
Councilor Bay, you're on mute.
How about now?
That's good.
All right. I was saying that I initially had questions specifically about the vacant structures, but after some consideration, I don't anymore. Any of my colleagues have any questions on this item?
I just have one quick one, Councilor Pro Tem. I just want to know, Jennifer, I know that when you talk about being a partnership in receiving the grant, but the city has to apply. So in administering the grant, if the university or whoever is administering the grant, are we going to be responsible for I'm not saying there's going to be any misadministration, but are we going to be held responsible? And we're not administering it, we're just going to be participating?
Yeah, so it's a great question, President Hudson. One of the things that we anticipate coming out of this, if we're successful in the proposal, the state will be looking to enter into basically a three-way agreement between the city and then the research entities, and actually the technology firms, which will come in and propose specific technology solutions kind of on top of our proposal later. So I know the structure of that's a little odd, but I would suspect there will be, kind of an agreement in writing, which will be a multi-party agreement. And one of the things that we'll look for when that documentation is developed is, I think, a pretty clear delineation of roles and responsibilities and also liabilities, to your point, because it is a really important point. And given that, we're proposing something at this stage, and there will be, a proposal on top of it from a technology firm, and then the state's going to negotiate an award with us. Our expectation is actually that we will come back to the council and seek approval to actually enter into that agreement, because at this stage in our application process, we don't even necessarily know what that agreement is going to look like, because we don't know who all the partners are up front. So, rest assured that I think if we are successful with this, we'll have to come back to you all, probably in a couple of months, and look for your, guidance on entering into the actual agreement with all of those parties. So we'll be specifically looking out for the issue you just raised, though. It's a good question.
And then we'll find out where the buck stops, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So, Commissioner, procedurally it goes like this: the research partner and the city would end up like bidding out for the technology component of the program. Is that how it's going to work?
Correct. Yeah. And the state plays a role in actually selecting the technology partners that are assigned to work with us. So, so that's why the agreement with the technology partner, it's really with the state as well. So it's a little bit different in that we don't necessarily have, 100% autonomy to select the technology partners we work with.
But the technology partner would have to come up with 25% of the funding.
Correct. Exactly right.
So it's only going to be sort of well-heeled technology.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have something similar, which is, so it's fair to say we don't know what we're going to do yet. And then who decides? It's a collective decision between the three partners, or is there like a driving force for who decides?
Yeah, so I think the state's program managers really vet and validate the applications that come in from the technology partners. It's a little unclear to us still at this stage, whether we're a part of a committee that looks at those technologies or exactly the process that gets used. There's still a lot of ambiguity from the state on this application, for better or worse. So, but that said, we believe that's kind of the process. The state will essentially be the first ones to review those applications and look to make matches with the 5 cities that get selected. So that's kind of what we anticipate at this point, at least.
I guess I feel like I've said this before, but I'll be redundant and maybe use different words. But some of these grants, it seems like the city would benefit from having a more aggressive agenda. So, for example, I could see the water, like this is talking some stuff about the lake and algae blooms, but I could see our billing. Like, I think one way to save money in water is to have automated billing. And if there was a way to use drone technology or our public lights or something so that the billing, nobody had to go around and check the meters, but they just reported automatically and we could share that with customers in a more timely manner. Like, that would be like an agenda item that I could imagine people would be on if we were articulating it in these types of applications. So we're saying, look, if we could do this, we're going to save this much money, kind of like the lights. Like, if we make this investment, we're going to have these savings. And that right off the bat is a compelling reason for the partners to focus on it. Right now, I rarely feel that we have that type of agenda. So we're just like agnostically moving forward with the partners and hoping that something great comes out of it. And that feels less, to me, it feels less likely like that will happen when it's not specific. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point, Councilor Rudd, and I think from the perspective of this application, in talking with Syracuse University and with New Air, who were really interested in partnering with us on this, we tried to identify use cases or project ideas that were of mutual interest from a research perspective. And also, noting that these are still relatively limited resources for pretty, I think, targeted pilots. Nothing that we would, certainly be able to necessarily scale across the entire city, for example. And so they're more experimental in nature in a lot of ways. But, you raise a good point, and I think,
add another thing, because you said finding, like, the phrase you used, mutual research agenda or something. Like, the city has no research agenda. It's only the university and the private company that have an agenda. Our agenda as a participant is to, like, add value to the service or to decrease the cost of the service. And that should be our agenda. Like, they should work their research agenda into our save us money or make the service better agenda. And I still think we should be more aggressive. We're too passive in our articulation of that. So they end up using the $400,000 to do whatever they want, because we say, oh, well, it's not scalable. Oh, well, we're not going to be able to do anything citywide. So we defer to you to do whatever it is you want. And I think this is our, like, innovation money. This is money to invest, do things differently. We should be forceful in our articulation of our needs. And I don't see that happening.
So I appreciate the point. The one thing I'll just add, and if Sam has anything to add, is that, I will say that the benefits that we see, which are kind of, listed at a pretty high level on this page, we think do kind of align with those exact objectives that you stated around either, setting up solutions that could help us save cost in the long run or improve service. We're right now struggling to figure out, how do we safely reopen City Hall and City Hall Commons and our other public buildings in the wake of COVID-19. I think making our buildings more resilient and figuring out how we use technology to track and understand where people are going and how they're using those spaces so that we can, provide space safely, securely, is an important opportunity. Same thing with building monitoring. I mean, we've been talking with codes about finding ways to do that in a more cost-efficient way than having to send inspectors out to periodically check all of our vacant structures. And hopefully, you know, by more proactively monitoring them, we reduce all of the down the way costs associated with building damage, not only to the vacant structures, but any, you know, occupied structures that are nearby them. So, you know, I mean, with all due respect, I 100% appreciate your comments and agree. I think we do need to be more aggressive, but, you know, I do think we asserted, you know, our priorities, or at least some priorities.
Is the vacant
Here.
structure thing relevant to the 400,000, or is that relevant to the next item? The one that we've talked about before.
Each of these three projects, the safe operations of municipal buildings, vacant building monitoring in this context, and the algae bloom monitoring in Skinny Atlas Lake, are all, they would all be a part of the vacant, this $400,000 ask of the state for ESD.
All right. So to my colleagues, the question becomes, we just spent 27 minutes on this topic. The question becomes, are we prepared to move this, or do we give consideration for there be more questions? So what is your opinion?
It's to move the $400,000 grant application. That's
Correct.
the question. Yeah, sure. Move.
Yeah, I'm in favor of moving it to with the provision that, you know, obviously we'll talk about a little bit more about this in the study session and maybe offline.
Gotcha. Council Kearney?
Favor of moving it forward.
Okay, so we're all set with that, Commissioner. Obviously, we'll have more dialogue. But just for anybody, the phone users, if you have an iPhone, you can switch your phone to silent, and it won't be interrupted by the dings or by the notifications. If you have a Droid phone, I'm sorry, but your phone just sucks. So let's move forward.
Hey,
I'm
watch
sorry,
yourself.
Council President. I'm sorry. I forgot you were a Droid user. NBD had a couple items, or an item, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Counselor. My phone is reasonably insulted, but I'm actually on my computer, so I think we'll be okay with it. So wanted to give an update on where we're at with the CDBG code related funds. I sent out, I believe Evan sent yesterday or this morning a budget. It does look like we may end up with another revision of that, so probably will not be something that's recognizing that if there is a revision to it, it won't be ready for June 8 meeting. We'd probably bring it up at for the next council meeting. We're going to have a conversation today with HUD to make sure with their requirements that this particular funding follows regular CDBG rules, but additionally is going to items that are specifically COVID related and are specifically last dollars in. And so you guys have had a chance to see the budget before. This is, I think, the second time that we've sent it. But I wanted to make sure that the committee overall felt like what we were putting into this looks good before we have our conversation with HUD. You didn't have any major concerns. We like I said, we're probably going to have to revise a little bit here and there. And I also wanted to make sure that the committee was fully understanding procedure. And what that procedure is that technically this is going to be an amendment to the con plan that was adopted and approved back in March. So we have held off on submitting what was approved then based off of the guidance that we received from HUD because what we'll be able to do is go through the 5-day public comment period once the budget is finalized. Our department will hold a public hearing. We do not have to have the 2 hearings so that burden is not put on the council. And then we're able to come back to council and say, with your blessing, this is what becomes the substantial amendment to what was approved before. So from a procedure standpoint and from a what we value within the budget standpoint, I just wanted to make sure everybody was feeling informed and on the same page. Happy to take all the questions around that.
All right. But if I heard you correctly, this is not ready for this agenda.
I suspect it's not going to be ready for this agenda because I think that we're going to end up making an adjustment on the budget.
Okay. So, Commissioner, in the interest of time, we'll table that for now. Move on to a couple other items.
That's good. Okay, can I add one quick thing for the next one, and that is the other thing that you've seen is we will have an agreement that we'll ask for an intermunicipal agreement so that DSS can administer the dollars out of this and out of ESG that goes directly to financial assistance.
That will be on this agenda, correct?
If you are okay with it having a capped out dollar amount, then yes, that can be ready for this meeting.
Explain what you mean if we're okay. You're saying that it's not prepared in our language now. Is that what you mean? Or it has to
So what I mean is that if we put a do not to a dollar amount in as opposed to a exact dollar amount in, then we would be ready to move on it because we'll make sure that what's in there now is the most that we could have in that line from the way this budget is looking like it would shift. It would only shift down from that.
All right, so we'll revisit that, Commissioner.
Sounds good.
Right, because then we wouldn't know what amount we would actually be voting on, is what you're saying.
Right.
So I'm saying that what we sent has a not to exceed dollar amount in it.
Well, we'll deal with it when it's ready. Heather Lemondola, are you here? Do you have anything? I'm not sure if I received. I don't think I received anything.
Here. Present. So I have, good morning, counselors. I have 2 items for you. The first is 700 North Salina Street. It's a special permit for, 700 North Salina Street, special permit for a restaurant modification. And that was to include live or electrically amplified entertainment. And so that was a waiver that was granted because it's within 300 feet of a residential district. And no one spoke in opposition to it. So yeah, that was it.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues?
No, I'm set with this. Heather, this is the old Antonio's, I think.
Yes.
Is it Joe? Counselor Carney?
Attilio's, yeah.
Well, it was Antonio's 30 years ago or 25 years ago, wasn't it?
I wouldn't know. I'm only 30, Counselor.
That's right. I forgot. I assumed you were older. I'm sorry.
I've aged poorly, I know.
Antonio's, Pat.
It was Antonio's, wasn't it? President?
Councilor Hogan, it was Antonio's. My father was there multiple times.
I think I was with him multiple times, as a matter of fact. So, okay.
Best shrimp parmesan there. Oh,
this is memory lane here.
Council President might have had lunch there once or twice with my father, too.
Heather, was that your only item?
No. The second one is a special permit for a modification to, well, actually, additional 2 restaurants at 727 South Cross Avenue. This is the Marshall. And so the commission waived signage and the parking, but only the parking for the 2 additional restaurants. So they have committed to maintaining 231 parking spaces as part of that proposal and resolution.
Okay. Any questions? Councilor Allen, any questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Anybody else? So on the initial item, you said the first item was 700. What was the street again, Heather?
North Salina.
North Salina.
That's what I thought. So Councilor Hogan, we're good there?
Yeah, we can move it.
Councilor Rudd?
Yes.
Carney?
Yes.
I'm going to guess you said yes. Councilor Carney?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now. And the project up on Kraus, the restaurant signage, Hogan.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. That's up in Councilor Driscoll's area, or Councilor, is that Councilor Allen? Are you up that far?
That's actually Councilor. That's actually Councilor Driscoll.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's carved out. That's in effect. Councilor Rod, you okay with that?
Yeah.
And Councilor Carney.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Director Lemondola. Eric Ennis, did you have anything? No. I see you shaking your head. So.
All right. No, I nothing from me, Council. Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything else to present? Evan, did we forget anything? I know you're around here somewhere.
Councilor Bay, there should be an item from CITA that I believe Judy was going to be on to present. Judy, are you on? I scrolled through the list and I didn't see her, but she did accept the invitation. Judy, are you a call-in maybe?
Yes, I am on, Evan. Yes, Councilor, the IDA is asking that you approve a request to allow us to act as lead agency for coordinated secret review for the JMA project on Cortland Ave, the former Coin Industrial Laundry Building, and further waive the 30-day notice requirement for notification to the council. We want to get this on the agenda, the site agenda, hopefully of June 16th. And just to quickly review, this is a redo. They are expanding the project from the original project in January. They've come to the conclusion that they need to demolish a large portion of the original Coin Industrial Laundry Building. And in its place, they are going to construct a new 40,000 square foot building and connect it with an atrium. And because of this, we need to, secret needs to be redone.
I don't have any questions or concerns there. Any of my colleagues on the committee have any questions or concerns?
I'm fine moving it.
Fine with it? Okay.
I don't have any questions.
I think I'll reserve. I have a couple of questions, but maybe I'll talk to Judy offline about it, and then talk to you, Councilor Bay and Councilor Allen. But I'm okay with moving it.
All right. So thank you. We'll move forward with that item. I believe that is it for Committee on Economic Development. Look at that, Councilor Rudd. 30 seconds before your meeting is supposed to start.
That guy knows how to run a meeting, I'll tell you. That Councilor Bay.
That's right.
Corcoran, Cougar.
That's what it is, not Henniger. Hey, Rudd.
I still don't think we should do any in-house censors. But that's my last 30 seconds.
So we'll entertain that further in study session.
Councilor Bay, just for clarification, the one you weren't sure on there, in between we talked about, the first one we talked about was already on, and then before the special permits from Heather, we had something that it was unclear whether they were going to put it on or not to exceed amount or be more specific.
Right.
So is that going on or no?
No, because it sounds like they're not done with it.
Okay.
Yeah, Councilor Bay, we won't be submitting that given that there's still lingering questions, so I'll make sure not to give that to the clerk.
All right, appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Start the Finance Committee meeting. Councilor Rudd, Councilor Bay, Councilor Hogan, Councilor Carney, same committee as earlier. Evan, I would thank you for sending the emails by committee with the attachments. I think that's a vast improvement. I would just ask if potentially you would number in the body of the email and say there are 4 items, there are 6 items, because there's often multiple attachments for one item, I think, which makes it harder to be clear from my perspective. Like,
I'm gonna try for the next cycle to include a list, like a spreadsheet list for the individual items. and I can try to designate which files go to which item. I know it can be a little confusing on our end as well. So I'll try to make it a little more user friendly.
Sure. Or even if you just said, like, in the finance committee meeting, there's 7 attachments. I'm not sure if that actually means there's 7 items, but I kind of think there are fewer than 7. But if you just said, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with the whatever 6-word description of each, that would be ideal from my perspective at the moment. But do what you want. I mean, this is an improvement. With that, I guess we could start with the IT items. The first one says not in 6-month extension. Dave on.
Counselor, I don't see Dave Porak on. I'm going to text him right now and make sure he's getting on.
Okay. The first The next one's Cloud Economics Modern Workplace Engagement. That's also Dave Proack. All right, I guess, is there somebody from finance who wants to do the finance item, which is the tax levy? Dave Del Vecchio, possibly. Or Brad.
Counselor, can you hear me?
Yes, Dave, we hear you.
Yes. Yes, the tax levy request is an annual request. It's consistent with what the council approved with the budget. It just gives the Department of Finance the authority to collect the city and school tax levies as they've been approved. The numbers are all consistent with the budget, and I'll take any questions if you have. Again, it's just a legal authority to allow us to proceed with collections.
Okay, sounds good. I know my friend Dan Romeo on the school board will watch this eventually. I just want to point out that we're collecting almost $2 for the school for every dollar we collect for ourselves. I'm fine with this item moving forward. Are there any questions related to the tax levy? Councilor Bay, Councilor Hogan, Councilor Carney, are you good?
I'm all set.
Good to go, Councilor Hogan?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just opening the SCSD agreement. That seems to be next. Graham Tech Engineers. Who wants to talk about that one? Not to exceed 400,000 general engineering. Installation of video surveillance cameras, network video recorders, intercom systems, card readers. Anybody?
Counselor, who submitted the letter?
It says from Mary Vossler.
Yeah, Councilor Rudd, Mary and I believe Suzanne Slack is also on. So if one of them could fill in the details on that, that would be helpful. Mary, are you available, or Suzanne?
Yeah, I'm available, but I think Suzanne looks like she's on the call. I don't know, maybe she can't get through. This was a resolution from the Syracuse City School District to increase a contract with Ram Tech, I think from $400,000 to $600,000 to do those projects that are listed in the letter. I don't have details of each one of those projects, so possibly Suzanne can explain them. No, she just, it doesn't appear that she's got video or audio. So
just glancing at the letter, I can't tell where the $200,000 goes. It just seems like a very generic
I think it goes to most of those projects to do the design and then the engineering. So the school district would have to provide that detail.
Okay, I just don't see any schools. I just see like types of stuff they will buy, but to the extent it doesn't list facilities. So
she's on the call, counselor, and she must be having some technical difficulty. If she can't get the audio going, maybe she could call you directly. I hope you can hear me, Suzanne.
All right, I'll talk to Suzanne. Let's just see if she's able to join while we move forward with the other items. We'll circle back around, see if she's able to join. The next item. Budget legislation, amend local law relating to City of Syracuse travel policy. Who wants to talk about that one?
Hi, it's Adria. So we have proposed new, some changes to the travel policy. They're all listed out in the legislation, but for this purpose, do you all mind if I share my screen? Because they're kind of just itemized out a little bit, and I think it'll be easier to follow along.
Sure.
All right. Okay, so some things that went into this were things like practices that were already happening, but they weren't written in, so we added them. Others, we changed some of the wording, and then we added some. So just running through this, the big changes will be for approvals needed. Before, it was approval by the mayor and the budget director. Now we're saying the department head, a budget analyst, and a mayoral designee will do the approvals. Before, the approvals were the travel papers needed to be submitted a month ahead of time. We're transitioning the travel papers to an electronic form for obvious reasons. So we don't think we'll need the month headway to kind of circulate all the papers for signatures. So we're just saying, get them in as in time before your trip. I guess the current policy that exists, that we're not proposing a change, but we're just asking it to be added to the travel policy, is the use of credit cards, personal credit cards. So you should make sure that you have authorization before you book something, because otherwise if you get denied, you won't get your money back. For a vehicle, this isn't too big of a change, but we're just asking that they request that people who are traveling via car request a city vehicle from the fleet manager. It's a less expensive option than reimbursing people for mileage. Now that we have a fleet manager, that's easier to do. The mileage language here, this is already a policy, but it's in place. We're following the IRS guidelines for mileage reimbursement, just a slight change in the language. When people travel, this is a practice, but I think it's actually officially going into the legislation, is that you should use the tax exempt status of the city, so you're not paying tax on a hotel room. For meals, what has been the practice before was a meal policy that went into place, I think, in 1980. So you get $5 for breakfast, $10 for lunch, $15 for dinner. Instead, there is again similar to a mileage reimbursement standard set forth by the federal government that is based upon, I think it's based upon your county. But basically, rather than kind of do those itemized, you would just get a per diem allowance. However, if you're leaving late in the morning or early afternoon, you get 75% of that. Or if you're coming back before dinner time, you only get 75% of that daily allowance. Other things that both the receipt and discounts, these were practices, but they weren't in legislation. So save your receipts so that you have them when you do your reimbursement. If there's the ability to get a cheaper rate, you should do that. For late requests, if you're getting a late request in, you need to explain why you're doing it late. Then tipping is the next ones are kind of new things that we've proposed to add. So for transportation, you are allowed to tip up to 15%. If you want to tip more, that's out of your own pocket. There will be no reimbursement for tips associated with meals or other things because you already have a per diem. Putting in there that if you violate the policy, your reimbursement could be refused. You should get an easy pass from the fleet manager too. You should try to use the government rate, which is cheaper as well. If you travel someplace and you either go there earlier than necessary or stay there later, any additional time is out of your own pocket expense. It can't be charged to the city. For local travel.
I don't know if other people are like me, but I personally can't hear this. Like, it's so much information. It does look like a helpful file. Can you share this with the committee so that we could read it?
Yes.
The way we only have the legislation, and the legislation I don't think really easily shows the before and after.
Yep, no problem. So just share. You don't want me to talk anymore?
No, I'll maybe take some questions, but I don't think we need the read through. Okay,
that sounds good.
Other committee members, questions related to this, and this is the product of your lunches and engagement with all the staff, right, to revise this process to make it.
Yes. Yeah, and so then the other big part of this that you don't necessarily need to vote on is that the papers, like I said, the papers are going to go digital. They'll be routed through PeopleSoft. So that should help as well. Our goal would be, if this gets voted on, to implement and update the new policy with the new fiscal year, although it probably won't be that relevant because I don't anticipate really people traveling that much in the near future.
Adria, in fact, what you just said in your last sentence, I'm just wondering, I mean, why are we doing this? Has there been some gross malfeasance among our travel? Do city employees travel this much? I'm just thinking using the resources of your department to do something like this is, to me, sort of a waste of time, frankly.
Yeah, so admittedly, this was started like a couple of years ago, and because we're like we have so many other things going on, that's why it's just taken so long to kind of get this done and wrapped up. So we're just trying to tie a bow on this and get it done. But I will say that the current travel policy and practice, it is very cumbersome. It does take a lot of staff to actually map out how many different hands it touches. There are a lot of different approvals. And so I had calculated at one point in time how much staff time we think changing this will save. I can see if I can dig that out. But
no, that's okay. You can keep it.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, it'd be nice if, who has a city credit card, possesses them? How many of them are out? How many people have them? Something like that, maybe we would like to know.
So Brad is on and he can probably chime in, but from the travel point of view, so I have a city purchase card, which has a $1,000 a month limit that I am not allowed to use for travel. With this, there was also the option for department to do a lot of travel to get a purchase card that could well be used for travel. Now that has its own policy in place. And as an example, you cannot, the policy as it's laid out now is like the travel card cannot actually go with you. So you can use it for upfront reservations, like hotel reservations or airlines, again, as long as you follow those rules and get all your discounts and, you know, are tax exempt for everything.
Adria, like Councilor Rudd said, maybe you could send us that policy. I'm just like, I made my point. I think that your department does a great deal of good for the city, and I'm just a little worried that you're assigned this type of task.
Yeah,
doesn't seem to management, to my opinion. So
we are almost done with it, and then I don't ever want to do travel stuff again.
I'll back you up.
Is there any one or two particular things related to the changes that is like the biggest victory in terms of something that made no sense that we're making more sense out of?
So one of the big things is meals. Like, it seems silly, but the amount of staff time that goes in to calculating how many meals you needed before, you basically, like, wherever you went, you had to get a layout of the day, found out how many meals were being served, and then deduct that from your paperwork of how much you're going to get paid. And it's, you know, not a huge deal, but when you're doing lots of travel papers, it does take time. And the other big one that I know doesn't impact my office as much, but other offices I think are excited about is there's a local policy now. So if there is travel within the county that does not cost anything, you don't have to fill out travel papers anymore. You just have to get approval from your department head.
All right, I'm to move that forward. I think everybody else okay moving it forward?
Yes, please.
Okay, what else do we have? I think it's going back to the items. Is Dave Proack, was he able to join in the meantime?
Sorry about that.
We hear you, but you sound kind of far away.
Mary Bossler.
Mary, you're
Yeah.
still on.
If Jimmy's running the meeting, Jimmy, if you can mute Mary.
All right, Dave, go ahead.
All right, so I have two letters which I'm seeking your support. The first is the opportunity to do what's called a modern workplace assessment. Microsoft sponsors these and pays a vendor, a third party, to run these. This is looking at how some of our current usage in licensing with Microsoft versus some opportunities to move to the cloud, whether it be Office 365, email to the cloud. The county and the city are both doing this in the same time frame, and I know that both organizations are looking at we're looking at migrating to Office 365. The county is already on there, but their enterprise agreement expires at the end of this calendar year. So the first letter would allow us to participate in this modern workplace assessment. It's conducted by a third party. The value is at, I think it's like $5,080. Microsoft pays the third party. We're not billed. We don't have the money never comes to us. Microsoft does quite a bit of these sort of workshop engagements where they pay a third party to come in, do a proof of concept or study something. We're asking for permission to move forward with that.
For this one, we pay $5,000 to figure out how much money we would save by making a bigger change to.
We don't pay a dime. We don't pay a dime. Microsoft puts the bill, and they pay for a third party to do this modern workplace assessment. That's where we would be analyzed, looking at our current Microsoft license usage, and in the future, what that would look like if we went to the cloud for the Office products, for email, for SharePoint, for OneDrive, for OneNote, all sorts of things.
All right. When do you think you'll have the result of the Microsoft?
It's soup to nuts. It's 60 days. So is the county's going to get started, I think, in a week or two. So as soon as we get approval, we would expect to start the engagement in roughly the same time period. But the results are back in, yeah, there's a 60-day schedule for it.
Can you please share their analysis that they give to you with us, with the committee?
Absolutely. Glad to do that.
Any other questions on this item? Okay, are we good moving it forward? Councilor Hogan, Councilor Bay.
Yeah, I'm fine with moving it forward.
All right, thank you, Councilor Carney. Sounds good, Sewell.
My second item is a extension of a current agreement. We have an agreement for professional services that we receive from a company by the name of Naughton and Associates. They provide IT consulting. They are awarded their current contract based on an RFP. The RFP was for either a 2 or 3 year time period with, I think it was a 3 year time period, 2 1-year extensions, typical city contract in terms of that. That actually expired yesterday. So we anticipated doing another RFP, but it just didn't happen during this 9-week time period. So we're asking for a 6-month extension of the termination of that contract.
So this is the rate, the amount of money is unchanged? How does
Their rate is unchanged, and it's going to come from the same budget line it always has. Same budget amount we always budget for our professional services.
And it's like half the annual amount, the 125. It's a 6-month contract, but it says will not exceed 125,000 per year.
Yeah, so that's left over from a previous extension, where the contract calls for it not to go for more than $125,000 a year. Over the 6 months, we would do less than half of that. We're only budgeted at 125 for the whole year. The focus on this legislation is mostly just to allow us to keep doing business with them while we issue an RFP.
Okay. Can we maybe just clarify the letter to say that you're not going to spend the whole 125 in the 6-month period somehow?
Yeah. I'll update that to be whatever half the 125, 62,500. I'll update that letter.
Sounds good. Okay, with that change, I'm fine moving the item forward. Anybody else?
Dave, what do they do for us?
Oh,
they're just.
Oh, that's a great question, Councilor Hogan.
Great question, Councilor Hogan. They do all sorts of.
I get 2 of them. Huh?
They do all sorts of IT consulting. Everything from they do a lot of our server maintenance, an awful lot of our server maintenance. They work on our backups. They work on our servers, our upgrades, our patch management. They help with our desktop rollout. We have desktop technicians who do vast majority of the work, but they help us with a series of tools where we manage our 750 desktops. They're pretty much a soup to nuts IT consulting firm. They've worked for the city for a long time. Their rates.
Local outfit?
Oh yeah, they're local. Their rate is very competitive, and it's always been competitively bid. They'd actually worked for the city, done work for the city longer than I've been employed here. So they have a lot of institutional knowledge, which is good.
Okay. I guess we can move it there, Councilor Rudd.
Okay. Dave, how long have you worked in city IC?
24.5 years, just about.
Rookie.
Nice. Okay, that item is fine moving forward.
I'll get that letter updated. I'll get the letter updated. Thank you.
Suzanne Slack, is she able to speak now? Any chance? Still no Suzanne.
I sent her a private message, and Evan, I think, told everyone that he was going to call her, but I have not heard.
Yeah, counselor, I gave her a call, but there was no answer. So if we can't get to her, we can make sure she comes to the study session, or if you're not comfortable, we can just get her in the next cycle.
Can we just, what is it? It's I had it open, I forget.
We would get
the
Naughton
agreement
Associates
for-
to help her out.
Yeah. For the, okay, so I guess if Evan or somebody could communicate to her that just a description of where it occurs, I think we're fine to move it forward, but she should present it to the whole council at study session, given that we haven't talked about it at all.
Yeah, counselor, I'll touch base with Suzanne to make sure she's ready for the study session.
Okay. Councilor Bay, Councilor Hogan, Councilor Carney, we good with that?
Yes. Good.
Yes.
I think that's all the items. Is that all the items on your side, Evan? Any closing comments, remarks for Finance Committee?
Gotta save some money.
Save some money. Those answers in those vacant houses, those empty trash cans. All right. Thank you, everybody. I think the next meeting is at 1 for Parks and Rec. Is that correct?
That is correct. So just to clarify, Councilor Rudd, you've got the tax levy, the school district, the travel policy, and 2 IT items from Dave Prower.
Yes, that sounds right to me. Evan, you concur?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilor Rudd.
See you in a little bit.